Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video I'm going to check the Skyzone Sky S140 Quadcopter. In this video I'm going to go through its features, show you how to set it up on BetaFlight, take it for a test flight and give you my honest opinion about it. So let's start by opening the box and see what we're getting inside. So first of all, as you can see, it comes in its own dedicated case. I'm not sure how useful this case is going to be, because normally I carry my quadcopters inside the bag, but still, it's a pretty cool thing to have. Inside the case, we can find the quadcopter, the connectors, and the OSD controller for the Foxeer Micro aero camera. This Velcro, which, as I told you in my review of the Hornet, I'm not a big fan of, because this thing is not good enough to hold the battery in place, especially for 3-inch quadcopters that use normally 650 and 850 mAh LiPo batteries, which are pretty big. My advice is not to use this Velcro, and I recommend using a better one with a buckle, because this thing is going to make sure that the battery is not going to be dropped in the middle of your flight, which is pretty unpleasant. In addition, we get in the instructions manual, which are basically the layout of the board. You can see here the features of the quadcopter and also the frequency table for the VTX. Finally, we get in just one set of propellers. These are the Dalprop T3032, and I'm not going to use these propellers in my test flight. I'm going to use the Gemfin propellers. I've been very happy with their propellers, and I think that Skyzone should include these propellers. These are pretty old and they bend very easily, and these ones, in my opinion, are more durable and are going to perform better with this quadcopter. So let's have a look on the quadcopter itself. On the front, we can find the Foxeer Micro aero camera. In order to adjust the camera angle, just loosen these two screws over here, and then you can set your desired camera angle. It goes all the way up and it tilts all the way down to about parallel to the ground. I will set it up on this angle. Then when you're done, just tight these two screws and you're going to be good to go. The motors that this quadcopter is using is 1506 4100 kV motors made by RCINPOWER. I haven't tested any motors from this company before, so this is going to be a first time for me. Moving on to the stack, the bottom 4-in-1 ESC controller is a 20 ampere BLHeli 4-in-1 ESC controller, and on the center we can find an Omnibus F3 flight controller. This is not the receiver, this is the VTX, which is not connected to the stack. I'm not sure why it's not mounted well, but you will have to mount it yourself. And by the way, this is a plug-and-play quadcopter, which means you will have to provide your own receiver. The output power of this VTX is selectable between 0, 25, 100 and 200 millivolts, and as you can see, the linear antenna is soldered to the board, which means you won't be able to change it with another antenna. It is quite surprising, because you can see that this frame is intended to be used with an SMA or an RP SMA connector. We have this hole on the back, but it's not used with this VTX. Connecting a receiver to this quadcopter is done through this port over here. The right pin is the S-bus, then 3.3 volts, plus 5 volts, and then the ground. The receiver I'm going to use with this quadcopter is the FrSky XSRE, which surprisingly has the same connector, so it's going to be pretty easy to connect. All you have to do is just unpin the third wire, because we don't need to connect the 3.3 volts. So just remove it and then connect it to one side and then the other one. And all I need to do now is just to mount it properly inside and just make sure the settings on BetaFlight are correct. Now, before I'm going to mount the receiver, I'm going to show you how to configure this VTX. So configuring the VTX is done using this button over here. If you long press it, the VTX is going to enter configuration mode, and it's going to be indicated by a red dot that is going to flash here. So just long press it for 2 seconds, and now we can short press this button in order to set the channel. You have 8 options. I'm going to set it on 7. Then you have to long press it again for 2 seconds in order to set the frequency. So you can set it between A, B, C, D, E, and F. So you have 6 options in total, which means we have 48 channels. I'm going to set it to D. So now the frequency is 5860. And finally, you can long press it again for about 2 seconds, and we can set the output strength. It can be either set to low, which is 25 milliwatt, U, which is 100 milliwatts, high, which indicates 200 milliwatts, and just one hyphen, which means the VTX is going to be off. I'm going to set it in my test to high. Finally, in order to save the settings, just long press this button, and now the settings are saved. You can see that it circles between all the settings, so then you can see the settings that you chose, H7D. I recommend you to test the video before wrapping everything up, because after that probably this little button is going to be hard to be pressed, and also you won't be able to see clearly the LED screen. And we can see that we're getting the image properly. And by the way, you can see that they chose to leave the OSD of the camera, so you will need to remove it using the provided OSD controller. So now the quadcopter is ready to fly. As you can see, I added the receiver, and I also added this LED board that has an integrated buzzer, and it's really easy to connect it to because I just use this connector over here. It's a little bit oversized, but it will do the work, and it will help me to find the quadcopter in the grass in case I will lose it. In addition, I used this jam fan flash propellers, and if you don't have these tools, I really recommend to get multipliers and also an 8mm wrench. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for you to put the propellers because these shafts are a little bit oversized, and putting the propellers wasn't an easy task. It's not impossible, but if you're not going to have these tools, it's going to be practically impossible for you to change the propellers and even to put them on. The weight of the S140 without the battery is 146.4 grams, so it's a little bit heavier than the XGB 145 that weighs 132 grams. The weight difference probably related to the frame being a bit heavier, and also the S140 is using 1506 motors, whereas the XGB 145 is using 1407 motors. If we're looking at the bottom of the quadcopter, we can see that the XGB 145 is using an X stretched frame, whereas the S140 is using a true X design. It's a uniplate, which means if you're going to break an arm, you're going to need to replace the entire bottom plate, but I don't think it's going to break very easily because it looks like this plate is made out of high quality carbon, and in addition, the thickness of the bottom plate is about 2.9 millimeters, so it's slightly thicker than the plate of the XGB 145, which is about 2.8 millimeters. On my test flight, I'm going to test this quadcopter with the Tattu 850 mAh 4S battery, the CNHL 650 and 850 Ministar 4S batteries, and the GNB 450 mAh 3S battery. I don't think I'm gonna get a lot of flight time with this small battery, but I want to test it also with 3S to see how it performs. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go through BetaFlight configuration. I'm also going to flash the ESCs because they are outdated, and then I'm going to take this quadcopter outdoors to see how it performs, and I will see you in the end of this video in order to give you my conclusion. So overall, I think that the S140 is a really well built quadcopter. These motors provided plenty of punch, and I could even easily carry my Runcam 3 along with the CNHL 650 mAh 4S battery, and I could get about 2.5 minutes of flight time including the Runcam 3. It's not a lot, but still for a 3-inch quadcopter, it was kind of surprising that it could do it that easily, and even the friends I was flying it were really impressed with this quadcopter. In terms of flight time, you can expect about 3.5 minutes of flight time using a 650 mAh 4S battery, about 4 minutes of flight time using the 850 mAh 4S LiPo batteries, and about 3 minutes of flight time using the 450 3S LiPo battery. Of course, it depends on the way you're flying a quadcopter. If you're gonna be very aggressive, you're gonna get probably shorter flight time, and if you're gonna fly it in a more calm way, you're probably going to get about 20% more flight time. Probably the biggest question is if it's better than the XJB 145, and I can tell you honestly that if you compare it by price, I think that the XJB 145 provides a better value for money because it's priced around $150, whereas the S140 is priced at around $210, which leads me to my next point, that it is a little bit too expensive. Even though they provide this nice carrying pouch, I think that the price point should be around $170 or something like that. I will try to include a coupon that will lower the price, but still I think that Skyzone should take into consideration that the price is a little bit too high, especially considering that we're getting only one set of propellers. And as I recommended you in the beginning of the video, don't use these propellers. If you have this quadcopter or you're gonna order one, get the Gemfan flash propellers. They're gonna be much better with this quadcopter. In addition, I think that my upgrade of adding this buzzer is of a necessity, and I recommend to Skyzone on their next 3-inch quadcopter to include at least a buzzer, because it will help you find the quadcopter in case you lose it. And I do think that adding the LED panel on the back adds some nice touch, especially if you want to fly this quadcopter at night. So overall, I think that if Skyzone wants to sell a premium priced 3-inch quadcopter, they should take everything into consideration, even including a better Velcro strap, because this one is probably not going to be usable, and this one was much better, and the batteries I've used were safely secured using this strap, and with this one I don't think it would have been the case. Finally, I would like to thank Nick Burns for allowing me to include his PID settings in my video. I really enjoyed these settings, and I think that if you have this quadcopter, you should definitely give them a try. As always, I thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it and you find it useful. If you have any questions about this quadcopter, feel free to ask it in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you like this video, and consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already subscribed. See you on my next videos, and goodbye.